What's up, Jackalopes? I'm Hope. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the leap year book tag, which was created by Hannah from Melted Books and Amy from Amy Myer, and I'll link their original videos down below. But this tag is obviously themed around the leap year. It uses numbers like 4 and 366, and ideas like an extra day, leaping ahead, to inspire its questions. And I just think it sounds like a lot of fun. So nobody tagged me to do this. I'm a new channel. Nobody's gonna tag me. But I just decided that I wanted to do this, especially since I can't do it again for another 4 years. It's my one opportunity, so we're just gonna do it anyway. With no further ado, let's leap into it. The moment when you start filming before you have all the books gathered. Anyway, everything's out of order. It's fine. I'm gonna pretend like I have my shit together, okay? Okay. The first question is an extra day. What's a book that brought something a little extra? And for me, this was Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, which I just finished reading last week. I don't normally read young adult literature, and in my previous experience with what I have read, it tends to have not as much depth to the characters as I would like, but this book brought that extra thing for me. This book has such great character depth that the story is really interesting, but I was really reading it for the characters, and I think it's in part because of the way it's written in multiple perspectives. So you're getting other characters' views on things. You get the protagonist's views on something, but you're also getting other people's views on them, other people's experiences of them, and also you're getting his views on people, and then other people's views on those people, and oftentimes those people's perspectives themselves. Because of the multiple perspectives and just the way it was written, there was so much more nuance to the characters than I was expecting, especially given my previous experiences with YA. So this just had that extra depth to it that I really loved. Question 2 is, taking a big leap. What's one book that you are or were afraid to start reading? Or to read? And for me, this is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This is a thriller following two sisters whose older sister disappeared when they were younger, and now they've been brought back together after not speaking for several years once one of their husbands is murdered, and it's apparently connected to their older sister's disappearance. So they come together to figure out what's going on. And I've been wanting to read more thrillers, and this is recommended by Kat from Paperback Dreams. She said this is one of the only thrillers that she would consider rereading, and I believe she also has now reread it. I think they did a Papercut book club live chat about it. I usually like a lot of the books that she talks about, at least the ones that I have read, so I trust her recommendations. And also, my partner and I just decided to do a book swap for Valentine's Day this year, and this is one of the books that he gave me. I actually also gave him a copy of Pretty Girls, and he just read it, and he really wants to talk about it because he really enjoyed it, but he also said that it was quite dark and disturbing in a lot of parts. So I really am intrigued, but I'm also afraid to read it. I'm gonna read it, hopefully soon too, because I know he really wants to talk about it. But yeah, I'm nervous to read that one. Question 3 is, every 4 years, what is the fourth book that you read this year? And the fourth book I read this year is, don't drop it, is Mossflower by Brian Jakes. This is the second book in the Redwall series, which is a children's fantasy series. It was my favorite series when I was a kid, and I've recently started a challenge to myself to reread the whole thing and see how it holds up for me now. This is, as I said, the second book in the series. It's the second one that I've read because I'm reading them. I should say it's the second book in the series in publication order, and I'm reading them in publication order because that's how I read them the first time. But with that in mind, this book follows Martin the Warrior, who, because I'm reading in publication order and not chronological order, in other parts of the series, in other books, he is not a mythical, I take that back. He's a legendary figure. He was real. He helped found the Redwall Abbey, for which the series is named. and he's a legendary hero in later books, but this is his origin story, and it talks about the first time he arrived in Mossflower Woods and how he helped free it from the tyrannical rule of Lady Sarmina, the Wildcat. Question 4 is 366 days in a year. Look at your third shelf, name the 6th book on that shelf, and the 6th book after that. So I actually had to go in the other room to do this because my shelf here, as you can see, like, depending on how I count it, my third shelf either doesn't have any books on it or doesn't have 12 books on it. So I had to go to my main shelf in the other room, but I did do that. I made the effort. So the 6th book on that shelf for me is Silkworm by Robert Galbraith. This is the 2nd book in the Cormoran Strike mystery series, following Private Detective Cormoran Strike, as he's, in this book, taking on a missing persons case. So this woman comes in asking him to find her husband, and he quickly realizes that there is a whole lot more going on than just a missing person once he starts investigating this case. And that's really all I know about it, but I really enjoyed the 1st book in this series, so I'm excited to read this one. Now the 6th book over from that is another mystery, and it's one that I have read. This is The Dante Club by Matthew Pearl, and this follows actual human being, but fictional version of him, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, as he and a number of other literary contemporaries of his are translating Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy into American English for the first time. And this is actually true, the first American English translation is by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. But this book is a fictionalization of the time during which they were translating it. And so in this story, while they're working on this translation, somebody starts killing people in ways that are remarkably similar to specific punishments from hell in Dante's Inferno. So they have to use their knowledge of Dante's writings in order to figure out who's killing everybody, why, and then stop them. And I think this is just a really fun book. I love a book within a book, books with books in them, so that's always a plus for me, and like I said, I like the characters, and the story's just really fun. So then question 5 is leaping ahead. Name 4 books that you want to read by the next leap year. And this was difficult because I want to read all of them. I have a lot of unread books on my shelf. I just, counted them, and I think I've read, a fourth-ish, or a little less of the books that I currently own. So I want to read all of them, but I decided to pick 4 that have been on my TBR for a very long time that I really want to get to. So the first of these is Thunderstruck by Erik Larson. This is I think the only nonfiction I have on this list, but Erik Larson is one of my favorite nonfiction authors. His book, The Devil in the White City, was the book that kind of got me into nonfiction. I had disliked nonfiction for a very long time because when I was in elementary school, we had to do this thing where you read, I think it was 2 books every 2 weeks or something like that, or 2 books in a month. But basically, you had to read a fiction and a nonfiction and take quizzes on them. And all of the nonfiction we had at my school was very, very simple because it was for elementary schoolers. But it just didn't capture my attention, and then I kind of assumed that all nonfiction was like that it was just dry and boring. But then I finally got around to picking up The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson several years ago, and that really reintroduced me to nonfiction, and I really loved it. So then I picked up Thunderstruck, and it's been on my shelf for a long time. But this one is about Marconi and his invention of the telegraph, and how that was used to catch murderer Holly Crippen. I believe he fled to Canada, and because they were able to use the telegraph to communicate, they were able to catch him. I believe that's how that worked. I just know that I'm going to like this a lot because Erik Larson's writing, while it's very meticulously researched, it's very fiction-like. It reads just like a story rather than a piece of history. So you're kind of learning and being entertained at the same time. And I think it's really just a cool writing style. But the next book that I want to read before the next leap year is The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I've read one of his other books. Crime and Punishment is one of my favorite books. I read it for a class in college, And then I read about this one being one of his most beloved works. It's supposed to be funny and intriguing, and it's as the back says, a murder mystery, a courtroom drama, and an exploration of erotic rivalry. But it's about these three brothers, which their names are Dmitri, Ivan, and Alyosha. So it just sounds super cool. I'm always down for some courtroom drama and a murder mystery. I'm excited to read this one, especially given how much I enjoyed Crime and Punishment, which I know sounds weird here. I know a lot of people don't like it, or at least they think they're not going to. But it's definitely worth a read, I think, if you have the time. People apparently, according to the teacher that I took this Russian literature class with, tend to either love Dostoevsky or love Tolstoy. It's kind of an either-or situation, and for me that was definitely true. I love Dostoevsky, not a huge Tolstoy fan. But the next book that I want to read is The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. I read the first 2 books in this series in I want to say 8th, 9th, 10th grade. I read them across that time period. And then I moved to the city I live in now, and this ended up in storage. So you can see that I've started it, and I never took my bookmark out, but I never got around to actually reading it. And I really want to. But I think I'm going to have to go back and reread the first 2 first, because I think I'm going to be confused if I just jump in at this point. The last book that I want to read before the next leap year is Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas, because I started this a long time ago, and then other things got in the way. Specifically, I had a lot of reading for English in high school when I started reading this, and didn't have time to finish it, because, it's a pretty chunky book. But I know that what I did start reading of this, I really was enjoying. It's very easy to read and very fun, so I'm excited to read this one again, or restart it and actually finish it this time. Then the 6th question is Leapfrog. Name a book on your TBR that has green on it. So I picked one that's just basically green all over. This is The Rivals of Sherlock Holmes, and it's a collection of Victorian detective tales. I think most of them are written by contemporaries of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, but it's just a bunch of other Victorian detective stories. It's quite chunky, but it's, short story, so it'll be pretty easy to get through once I sit down to read it. Also, it was cheap. Also, I really like these Barnes & Noble classics editions like these, the hardcover ones, because they're remarkably light. This is a very light book. I also have their copy of The Divine Comedy, which is the Longfellow translation, and I got it to work on a paper for high school. It's super light. It looks huge. It's probably this size or a little bit bigger. It's the lightest book I own. So question 7 is, what bookish things do you steer clear of? It's bad luck is the theme. So I actually have over here, I don't know why I did a little half drag thing. That was stupid. Anyway, I have my thing of bookmarks, and I actually don't like this particular type of bookmark. This I tend to avoid using, even though I have 3 of them. These ones with these tabs that go on the pages, can I demonstrate without ruining one of my books? Possibly. They, go over the pages. I have great dexterity, as you can tell. They kind of do this thing. And the reason I don't like them is because of the way they do this thing. Because, with this one, it's quite bendy. And I have to really shove it down on the pages, and it dents the pages. And also, because I carry mine in my backpack usually. I'm not a student anymore. I graduated, but I still carry a backpack, and I refuse to let that go. But because I frequently carry books in my backpack, I have this tendency to have issues with these because either I reach in to grab something, or with this one, it's quite heavy, so it tends to sink, and if I hit my hand against it or if it sinks too far, it ends up ripping the pages. So this is my bookish thing that I tend to avoid, is these specific bookmarks. So I love these mostly because they're cheap, they're easy to come by, they do a great job of holding my place, and they don't tear up my books, because I already tear up my books plenty. I don't need my bookmarks to help me with that. That was far too long a rant on bookmarks, I'm sorry, but here we are. So question 8 is to tag 4 friends, and I don't have anybody to tag at the moment, so I'm not going to do that. And instead, if you watch this and you have any interest in doing this tag for yourself, I'm tagging you. Do it. Make the video. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed talking about these books and thinking about what I was going to talk about. I'm really glad I got a chance to talk about some of these books because some of them are favorites of mine. Obviously, I love Erik Larson's writing. The Dante Club is a favorite. I really am enjoying, or I have enjoyed what I've read of The Lord of the Rings. So, you know, this was a lot of fun. I'm excited that I did this. It was great. But that is everything that I have for you today. So if you're still watching, if you made it to the end, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you have any thoughts on any of these books or any recommendations you'd like to give me, I'd love to see it down in the comments. And yeah, I hope to see you next time. Bye.